Okay, guys, welcome back to another episode of Lawyered Up. I am your host, Jared Moore, and on tonight's program, we're going to have Reverend Mitch Randall, who is a Mvskoke Creek Nation citizen, along with Alex Luchenitser, who is with the Americans United for Separation of Church and State, and they're coming on the program to talk about a lawsuit that they filed against Ryan Walters and the Oklahoma State Department of Education concerning Bible teaching mandate and specific Bible. So thanks for joining me tonight, guys.
Jared, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. It's an honor to be here.
Great. So I wanted to start with you, Reverend Randall. How did you get involved in this suit, and why are you participating?
Well, Jared, that's a great question. And let me answer that in two parts. I would first like to say that this is the second suit that I have been involved in over the last couple of years. The first being a lawsuit that was filed against Ryan Walters when the board to oversee charter schools decided to use public money to find St. Isidore public charter or a private charter school. So that is still in the works. There's another case that the Attorney General has filed that has moved along in the legal process, but this is my second case. And the reason for my involvement in these cases, again, like I said, is twofold. First, as a citizen of the Mvskoke Creek Nation, I understand our heritage. I understand the narrative that has brought us to this point as a people. I am a proud son of my father and my grandfather and my grandmother, who were citizens of the Mvskoke Creek people, and they served in places of leadership within the nation, and I'm very proud of that fact. What I'm not proud of, though, is the story of my great-grandmother, Jared, Eloise Boutenot, who at an early age in 1919, her and her sister were taken from their family in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and they were taken to Chilocco Agricultural School up by the Oklahoma-Kansas border. There, they went under extreme duress. And immediately when they arrived on the campus of Chilocco during this time period, their hair was cut, which all of your viewers know is sacred to indigenous people. Their clothes were stripped of them. They were forced to wear military-style uniforms. They were not permitted to speak their native language of Mvskoke. Instead, they were forced to learn and speak English. In addition to that, they were forced to worship and learn from the Bible. All of this was funded by the federal government, but it was also run by Christian missionaries. So Oklahoma has a history, and we should know better when we try to force a religion upon any people. And as a citizen of the Mvskoke Nation, I find it appalling and offensive that Superintendent Walters would go to this extreme to once again force his extreme religious beliefs upon people that are genuine and children who are brought to the classroom, who are a captive audience. And it is just really extremely unnerving for me from an indigenous perspective. The second reason for my involvement in this lawsuit is because I am a person of faith. I follow the Baptist tradition. I was educated in a Southern Baptist seminary, served in Southern Baptist congregations, as well as other Baptist congregations around the states of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas. One of the great principles that was taught to me as a Baptist was the separation of church and state, primarily simply because of what I've already described in my grandmother's story, but also the story of people of faith that came to this country fleeing religious persecution. Roger Williams, who came from England to the Massachusetts Bay Colony, famously quipped that he had fled one persecution only to arrive at the shores of another. Christians have a way of oppressing their own and mandating their religion upon other people. Because of this, Baptists historically have advocated for the separation of church and state, which means a religious freedom for, or a freedom for religion and a freedom from religion, so that we can all practice or not practice our faith as our conscience dictates. So for me to be involved in this lawsuit, it is twofold. One, because of my ancestry as an indigenous person, and secondly, as a person of faith, standing up for that sacrosanct principle of separation in church and state.
Awesome. And if you're just tuning in and you're like, what are you guys talking about? There is a link to the lawsuit that's been filed in the description of this video, so you can click it and read it. And while you're reading that or taking a look at that, I wanted to switch over to Mr. Luchenitser to talk about what is this suit about and what are the core things that people will see in this suit.
Sure. Thank you, Jared. So let me just give you some background about what happened in case I'm sure most people know what it's about, but let me give some background in case people don't. So earlier this year, Superintendent Ryan Walters issued 2 memos ordering every public school district and every public school in the state of Oklahoma to incorporate the Bible into their curriculum for grades 5 through 12. So the Bible needs to be incorporated in history class, in English class, in music class, in art class. So it doesn't matter what religious beliefs a student may hold, or whether they hold any religious beliefs at all. Every student in Oklahoma, starting with grade 5, will be required to study the Bible as part of their public school education. And on top of all that, in late September, Superintendent Walters announced that he's going to spend $6 million in state funds to buy Bibles for every school district in the state, and to ship Bibles to all the school districts. And $3 million of that is going to be under Walters' plans would be spent in this fiscal year. Walters wants to send 55,000 Bibles to all the school districts in the state, and to spend $3 million of state funds on those Bibles. And Walters issued a request for proposals for the spending that appears to be gerrymandered to make sure that the winning bidder is the supplier of Bibles that were endorsed by President Trump. So we filed a lawsuit to challenge all this on behalf of Mitch and 31 other plaintiffs. So in addition to Mitch, 2 of the other plaintiffs are clergy. 4 of the plaintiffs are public school teachers. 16 are public school parents, and 16 are children attending public schools. And that number adds up to more, all those numbers add up to more than 32, because some of these people are fit into more than one category. So the lawsuit explains that Walters' actions are illegal for a number of reasons. First, as Mitch mentioned, they violate the separation of church and state. The Oklahoma Constitution prohibits the state from spending public funds in support of religious purposes or on religious items. And it also prohibits the state from preferring any one religion over another. And Walters has required that these Bibles be the King James Version Bible. So that's a Protestant version that many people who are, Christians or Jews don't use and don't believe in. And of course, people who aren't Christians or Jews certainly are being discriminated against as well. So, but in addition to the violation of church-state separation, Walters' actions are illegal for a number of other reasons. They're basically an abuse of power, abuse of authority, clearly in excess of his authority. So this policy that he adopted that requires all the teachers and grade 5 or higher to teach the Bible, that can only be adopted by following the process for issuing regulations. And he didn't try to follow that process at all. And also, there's a statute that gives local school districts the right to decide what materials they'll use in their curriculum and the details of their curriculum. So the state doesn't have a right to force school districts to include Bibles in their curriculum. And the money, the spending on the Bibles is also illegal for a number of other reasons. In addition to the church-state violation, it's unlawful spending in support of unlawful regulation. It's not authorized by the state budget, by state statutes, and the RFP is gerrymandered to favor a particular bidder. So for lots of reasons, this is a clearly unlawful action, and we filed this action directly in the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and we are asking the Supreme Court to issue a ruling that declares all these actions invalid, prohibits Superintendent Walters and the State Department of Education from enforcing the mandate that the Bible be taught in public schools, and prohibits them from spending state money to purchase Bibles.
Okay. So the other thing that I wanted to mention to you guys too is, if you have a question, put it in the chat. We've had a question pop up. I'm going to get to that in just 1 second, but I wanted to ask you guys, Mr. Luchenitser first. Do you anticipate, I looked at some of the other lawsuits concerning Mr. Walters and the Department of Education and some of the other things that he's done, and it looks like in the other times that people have petitioned for assumption of original jurisdiction by the Oklahoma Supreme Court, they've assumed the jurisdiction and then either issued or denied the whatever the additional motions were that they made, right? So my question to you would be, do you anticipate there being oral arguments in this case, or do you think it's going to be a situation where the Oklahoma Supreme Court's going to assume the jurisdiction and then issue some type of an opinion or an injunction? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, it's a little hard to predict. So far, what the Oklahoma Supreme Court has done is that it has ordered the other side in this case, Superintendent Walters and the State Department and Board of Education, to respond to our lawsuit by November 12th, which is Tuesday. And then we get 2 weeks to file a reply brief. And after that, the court might set an oral argument. They might set a full oral argument before the court itself. They might set an argument before a referee of the court, or they might just decide the case on the papers. And it's really up to them, and it's hard to predict what they might do.
Okay. And let's say that the Supreme Court rules against you guys. Is this going to be pursued up to the federal level and maybe all the way to the United States Supreme Court, or is this or if they decide against you guys in this case, are you just going to let it lay? What's the strategy for after the decision if you don't win?
Yeah, well, we think we have a really strong case, so we're hopeful that we'll win, but nothing is ever guaranteed in with a court of law. So if we don't win, this case does not have any federal claims. All our claims are under state law. Okay. So there wouldn't be anybody to appeal it to. But so we'd have to discuss with the other groups we're working on as to whether, the only possible additional recourse would be to file a new lawsuit in federal court. Okay. And it would have to be filed on behalf of different plaintiffs. I see. So we don't know if we would do that or not, but hopefully we would not get through that conversation, because we do think we have a really strong case.
Okay. All right. So we've had this question pop up from one of our regular viewers, T.Y. Pearl. I'm going to ask it, and paraphrase it maybe a little bit, but here's what he's asking. He's saying, we need a ballot measure that would prevent anyone with 2 degrees of consanguinity of someone who is employed holds a hierarchical position or title in a sectarian institution from serving on school boards. Is this something Americans United for Separation of Church and State might support or get involved with organizing in Oklahoma?
Well, actually, that would be unconstitutional.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a case that struck down I believe it was a Tennessee statute, but there was a state statute that prohibited ministers from holding public office, and the court, that case went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court held that statute was unconstitutional, that it violated the federal free exercise clause, which protects the freedom of religion. It's part of the First Amendment, because it discriminates against people who are clergy based on the fact that they have a religious vocation. So we wouldn't support that because of the courts, the proposal of the questioner, because the courts have already held that this type of thing is unconstitutional.
All right, great. Well, that's what I love to see, is that we're getting some definite answers on things. So with this case, and I know Mr. Luchenitser, have you been involved in the prior lawsuits with Mr. Walters in the Oklahoma State Department? Is that fair to say?
Yes, I'm also representing Mitch and 9 other plaintiffs in the lawsuit that challenges the state charter school board's approval of the proposed religious public charter school, St. Isidore of Seville.
And just to remind everybody, where is that case at, and is that still being deliberated in the Supreme Court?
Sure. So there's actually 2 cases. There's the case that we brought on behalf of clergy like Mitch, and taxpayers and educators, and then there was a case that the Attorney General brought, and we brought our case in the State District Court, and the Attorney General brought his case in the State Supreme Court, and the Attorney General's case was decided first, and the State Supreme Court ruled that having a religious public charter school violates the Oklahoma Constitution and violates Oklahoma statutes. So the charter school and the charter board have asked the U.S. Supreme Court to review that case, and we're not going to know whether the U.S. Supreme Court is going to review that case until January at the earliest.
Okay.
If the U.S. Supreme Court denies review, then the whole controversy is over. But anyway, our case in the district court is for now on hold while we're waiting to see what happens with the proceedings in the Supreme Court.
Okay. Reverend Randall, have you spoke to anybody at the Creek Nation government about this case in any way, or have they, do you know if they're supporting you guys or if they're on the other side? What have you talked to anybody in the government at all about it?
No, I have not spoken to anybody at Milwaukee about this case. I hope that my fellow Indigenous community would support this case based upon our history, based upon our deep desire for religious freedom for all people, and the very fact that a vast majority of Oklahomans reject this extreme policy of Ryan Walters.
Okay, great. So we are at 20 minutes, and we're getting close to the wrap-up time. And I wanted to give each of you an opportunity. Is there anything, and I would start with you, Reverend Randall, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is important to remember with this case that you want to mention before we get out of here tonight?
Yes, I would love to end with a story. I grew up on the east side of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I went to Walter Reed Elementary School in Tulsa Public Schools. Each morning during the 1970s, we would stand to do the Pledge of Allegiance and then be led in a prayer. For me, as not only an Indigenous person, but as a person of faith, prayer was sacred to me, as well as the biblical text that Ryan Walters is trying to uh, utilize as a political prop currently. But I tell that story because each time I rose, there was a little girl, a fellow Indigenous girl in my class who happened to be a Jehovah Witness, who did not believe in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance or offering the prayer. Each morning, as the entire class stood up to engage in that practice, this little girl had to remain seated. And I watched my fellow classmates tease her and make fun of her because of her religious belief. It is because of actions like that, policies that affect children, again, who are captive audiences, and that demonstrate how egregious this policy can be towards children. As a person of faith and as a student of the Bible, I hold 2 graduate degrees, a master's degree in biblical languages and a doctoral degree from Baylor University. To think that the Bible can simply be taught in a totally secular way is really, really ignorant of the fact. For me, the Bible is a religious text. It is the basis and authority for my faith, and to treat it otherwise perverts my faith and is an offense to my faith. So I am a proud participant in this lawsuit. I appreciate all the hard work that Americans United has afforded me and my fellow participants, and I appreciate your audience tonight listening to our case and our arguments in support of repealing this policy from Ryan Walters.
Okay, Mr. Luchenitser, last words?
Sure. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to what Mitch so eloquently said. I'm very proud to represent Mitch and his 31 fellow plaintiffs in this case. The Ryan Walters Bible mandate and the plan to spend $3 million in state funds to buy Bibles violate the religious freedom of students and parents and taxpayers and teachers. As Mitch discussed, students are being forced to study the Bible regardless of what their religious beliefs are or whether they have any religious beliefs, and that puts them in a situation where if they appear to not agree with or not be going along with what they're being forced to study, they'll stand out among their peers. They might be ostracized or made fun of. Teachers are also being forced to teach the Bible regardless of what their religious beliefs are, and that can only not only religiously coerce the teachers themselves, but it can damage the teachers' relationship with their students because they're being forced to provide teachings that teachers might not agree with, the students might not agree with, and that the teachers aren't trained to provide. And then taxpayers' religious freedom is also being violated because their taxes are being taken forcibly and being spent in support of religious items and beliefs to which they do not subscribe, and also the parents' religious freedom is being violated too, because religious matters belong in the home, in the house of worship, and not in the public schools. And the parents should decide, how and whether to bring up their children in religious matters, and whether their children should be taken to any house of worship, and it should not be done in the public schools. It should be done in the home, in the house of worship. So, in all these ways, Oklahoma's religious freedoms are being violated, and that's why we brought the case, and why we're hoping the state Supreme Court will put an end to these unlawful actions.
Well, thank you so much for that, and thanks for joining me tonight, guys. And if you guys are up for it, I'd love to have you back on, maybe after reply briefs, or if there are oral arguments that happen in the future, we could kind of do a recap on it, because it's something that we're following, because a lot of tribal citizens are impacted. And you guys at home, if you're watching this, you know, I told you there's a link in the description to the filing in this case. I encourage you to read it, because just like what Mr. Luchenitser was just talking about, the personal stories, that filing has the reasoning for all of everybody who's involved in the suit, why they joined the suit, and it has a lot of their personal experiences. So you guys should go check it out and see what's happening as a result of Mr. Walters and the Oklahoma State Department of Education's decision in this particular instance and the other ones. And just to let you guys know what's coming up next on the channel, on Saturday is November 9th. The Council Oak ceremony is going to be held, and I believe it's at 11 o'clock in the morning. And we are going to go and try to live stream the whole thing, or as much of it that I can live stream on the batteries that I have. So if you guys are interested in that, tune in for that. And if you're going to it, you'll probably see me there wandering around with a camera. Just come up and talk to me. Just remember, I am going to be live, so anything that you say to me, everybody's going to hear it. And then for next week, I don't have anything scheduled. And the week after, on November 20th, we are going to be live restreaming oral arguments in the Flop-Flocco Tribal Town versus the MCN judges case. So, and I'm going to do a little brief about that before we stream the oral arguments, just so you guys have some idea what the case is about and everything, because it's very complicated. It started back in 2007. With that being said, thank you again, guys, for coming on the program. Mado.
Mado.
And thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys